They say when a baby is born, so is a mother. But while you are there to help your baby grow into the person he or she is meant to be, who is there to help you? Many women feel lost and alone when they become mothers, wondering, who am I now? Sometimes it feels like the transformation from woman to mother is as radical as a caterpillar's transformation into a butterfly. Did you know that inside the chrysalis, the caterpillar literally turns into goop before it rearranges itself into a butterfly? This podcast is about the goop, what soul transformation looks like as you transition from being a woman to a mom. Your baby's growth matters, but yours does too. You're not alone. I'm your host, Brittany Meng. Welcome to the Motherhood Metamorphosis.
Hello friends, welcome to this episode of the Motherhood Metamorphosis. I'm your host, Brittany Meng, and today is a solo episode wrapping up season 4 of the Motherhood Metamorphosis. I have spent the morning reflecting on the last season and also reflecting on the last 10 years, and we're going to have discussion of both in this podcast. So just reflecting on season 4, it was such a wonderful season. It was a great way for me to come back after a 9-month hiatus, and it just felt really gratifying and healing in a way and just special. I was really proud of the interviews. I just feel like they've gotten better and better as the podcast has progressed over the last few years, and I was just really proud of the quality of the conversations and interviews that I was able to put out on the podcast. So I'm so thankful for all the women who came on and shared their stories. Thank you. And in all, for season 4, we had 17 episodes, 14 interviews with some amazing women. As of today, this is the 84th episode on the podcast. So I'm super excited to reach almost 100 episodes. That's my big goal for the podcast, but we've also had over 51,000 downloads. So thank you for everyone who has listened, maybe from the beginning, maybe you're a new listener, but every download counts. And it's wonderful to see the podcast reaching so many people from around the world. So I thought for fun, I would copy and paste all of the titles of the podcasts into a word cloud generator. And I'll share that image in the group this week when this episode airs. But I just wanted to read you some of the main words that came up for the podcast from the word cloud. Moms, obviously, finding, healing, body, challenges, becoming, changing, evolving, acceptance, joy, love, nurturing, gifts, want, thrive, living, remember, pursuing, relationships, and narrative. And there are other words too, but I just love that collection of words and thinking that's what the Motherhood Metamorphosis is all about. That's what motherhood to me is all about. It's about the challenges. It's about how we're changing and evolving, becoming, learning to accept, finding joy and love in new ways and new relationships. And I'm the one who writes the titles, but I'm trying to sum up the whole experience of each interview that I have. So I really just want to focus on what it means to be a woman in this unique motherhood relationship with ourselves and our children, what it means to mother in our chosen context, whether it's the culture we're in, the country we're in, and just how we're all trying to do our best in the 21st century as moms with all of our unique challenges and gifts and abilities. Some of my favorite episodes, honestly, this podcast is curated by me, and I know that I'm not sharing my story as much in each episode. It's focused on the guests, but as a person who is curating the conversation, I think my favorite episodes have to do with what I'm dealing with in my own life right now. You may have noticed that several of the episodes focused on body image and accepting your evolving beauty. And that's really what I'm dealing with right now in my own life. I really think I'm in perimenopause. I know it feels like maybe I'm too young, but I've read all this stuff online about how perimenopause can start like 10 years before you actually go through menopause. And I turned 40 3 days ago. and I am in it. Maybe even for the last 2 years, I've just noticed huge shifts in my cycle and in my weight and in like energy and fatigue and headaches and all kinds of things. And so in noticing all these changes, and I've heard one person say that perimenopause is basically reverse adolescence or reverse puberty. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. But it's also really stupid and hard, and like, it's just mind-blowing how frustrating it seems to be like, okay, now my body is changing again in dramatic ways and moving into this new stage of womanhood. So the episodes that really spoke to me were the ones that are about stuff that I'm going on in my own life. Again, huge shifts in my fertility and menstruation, and the episode about menstruation really was born out of stuff that I have been going through in the last few years. And if you haven't listened to that episode, if you're like, that is weird, I don't want to listen to that, oh my gosh, you need to listen to it. It is life-changing. Even if you are in peak fertility years, if you're a young mom, just go ahead and listen to it. It is so good. I also really, really loved the episode about baby steps. If you listen to that one with Caitlin Willing, I think it's because I would love to work with an organization like that. Hey, Caitlin, if you're listening, shout out, give me a call. I just think what they're doing is so cool, and my background is in teaching college students. I am passionate about helping women. I love the birth space and young motherhood experience, and so everything they're doing just really spoke to my heart, and that was such a fun conversation. Stuff that I did differently this season. The first episode I talked about how I was going to try to do some things differently. So here's the wrap up on how that went. So to try to make the podcasting a little easier on myself, because I got really burnt out, which is why I took such a long break, I tried to get the episodes to 35 minutes. Now, if you look at the time hacks on all of the episodes, you can see that I didn't really succeed in that. I think almost all of them go over 35 minutes. But I really tried. I used a timer a lot of the times when I was recording. Sometimes I completely forgot and we went like an hour. But my goal in keeping them shorter is that I had less to edit, and that really helped. So most of them were around 35 minutes. If you add on the intro and the outro, it made 37, 39 minutes, and with the bloopers on the end. So I tried really hard, and I feel like that was a good idea, was to keep them shorter. I did much less editing on each podcast, and I don't think it affected the quality of the podcast that much, which really just spoke to how much I was leaning into this perfectionistic, I have to edit out every and pause and the humanity out of every single guest to make it perfect, as I did in previous seasons. So I really just let people's conversation flow. I didn't edit out so many of the quote-unquote mistakes, and it made my editing time a lot shorter, and I don't think it took away from the quality of the podcast. Something else I did differently was I used a scheduling app to schedule the interviews instead of emailing back and forth a million times, trying to say which date works for you, which time works for you. I just let people pick from a calendar scheduling app that I had, and that was really helpful in protecting my time. Now, I did have to pay for it, but I think that money was well spent. The final thing I did was I leaned more into Buy Me a Coffee for financial support as opposed to Patreon. I think I actually had more financial supporters on Patreon, but I also felt a lot of guilt for when I wasn't podcasting and people were still giving money to the podcast. So Buy Me a Coffee, which is like a one-time donation app, worked a lot better for my personal guilt in as far as, hey, people are just donating one time and it's not just like withdrawing money every single month from them. So that worked out a lot better. It was also really fun to play around with Buy Me a Coffee. They had a little shop feature, and I enjoyed filling it with things that were free or some art I created. Now, people didn't download those very much, but I had a lot of fun creating the shop. So during these months that I'm going to be on hiatus for the podcast, you can still support the podcast. I still have to pay for hosting fees every month, whether or not I'm creating new episodes or not. So go ahead and head over to Buy Me a Coffee if you want to continue to support the podcast financially. So I'm going to switch from reflecting on season 4, which I'm really proud of, to maybe focusing a little bit on me, which you here's some of my story during the interview podcast as I reflect on my journey as well. But this episode airs on April 29th, and that is 3 days after my 40th birthday. Now, a couple years ago, or when my sister turned 40 2 years ago, and she was feeling kind of like, oh my gosh, I'm turning 40. And I'm like, oh, 40 is the new 30. Like, you're just fabulous and all these things. So I was like, I'm going to be perfectly fine when I turn 40. But honestly, it's kind of like crept up on me, and it's like dug in its claws a little bit. And I've been a little surprised because I have tried really hard in my aging to age like naturally and gracefully and like accepting things. But I felt kind of like some existential dread. I mean, to be very dramatic. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what if my life is half over? What have I done with my life? I'm looking old. I don't feel like myself. And I think that a lot of that has to do with, going through reverse puberty right now, which is super obnoxious. But yeah, like reflecting on turning 40 has been a big deal. And so today I took some time, as I really feel like reflection is a spiritual exercise, a personal growth exercise. So I took some time to reflect on the last 10 years and what my life looked like when I turned 30 and what my life looks like now in the last 10 years. And oh my gosh, my 30s have been just like a hurricane of change. How it's just been the definition of metamorphosis. Like immense change, like dissolving of my former self, personal growth and painful growth, and just how my creative outlets like the podcast are just born out of my own experiences. 10 years ago, when I turned 30, my kids were 6. I had twins who were 6. I had a 1-year-old, and I had just announced in my 30 things I'm thankful for on my 30th birthday blog post that I was pregnant with my 4th baby. Now, it was kind of a quiet announcement. It wasn't like a big Facebook announcement. People actually had to read the blog post to find out the pregnancy announcement. But that pregnancy announcement felt quiet to me because I had just had a miscarriage earlier in the year. And that miscarriage rocked my world. And I'm counting that as like one of the big life-changing events of my 30s because I had never experienced grief like that before. I had never experienced loss. And it really made me dig deep and do some reflection. But also like the grief, like the way I experienced it in my body and emotions and everything, I had never experienced anything like that before. And it was hard. It was really hard. But it gave me some amazing gifts. It did lead to working with an amazing organization called the Motherhood Collective, where I became a co-leader in a care group to work with women who had experienced miscarriage, child loss, and infertility. And that just opened my eyes so much to caring for women, creating community, finding ways to share experience, to become a better listener, to just sit in spaces with others in their pain, which is really a hard skill to learn, and one that I had some hard lessons in, and I had to be corrected and grow and change, and that really has shaped my life. And it also shaped my writing. Like I said before, it just took it into a deeper dive. I wrote very deeply and widely about my miscarriage, how it affected me, and I wrote as a way to process my pain. And it really helped me heal. And I think it allowed me to connect with readers in a way that helped them heal. And I was like, wow, my writing really can help people. And that was one of the first things I wrote about, that I had that realization. The next thing that was a huge life-changing event for me was my son's autism diagnosis. And that came pretty soon after my baby was born, Eli, my 4th baby was born. We were going through 1st grade. Like I said, my twins were 6. And that whole process of going through a child study at school and eventually the autism diagnosis, it took about a year. And that just rocked the foundations of my world, what I thought my motherhood was going to look like. I did a lot of grieving around that too, and just it was really hard. And now, I mean, it's so beautiful to look back and be like, 10 years later, here's this young man who's 16, and we've just worked so hard with him to learn about him, accept him for who he is, get him the supports he needs, just listening to him and loving him and helping him thrive in the person he is. And I love who he is, and I love how I've grown up with him. I just read something recently that said your, second, third, fourth kids, you raise them, but your first kids, you grow up with them. And I was like, oh my gosh, that like hits me in the gut. Like, that is so true, that you grow up with your firstborn. And we had a lot of challenges with our first kids. Like, they were twins to begin with, and they had some special needs, and just learning to be the parent that they needed to be, and not me shaping them into the box that I thought they were supposed to fit in. Like, that has transformed my life. During that time, though, it was really hard on my mental health. And so in my 30s, I first sought help for my mental health, like my depression and anxiety. And those were things that I had struggled with for a long time. And I got on antidepressants for the first time, and I went to counseling and just kind of learned how to talk about it or write about it, to work through it and cope better with things that I had been dealing with for a long time. And that was really, really life-changing for me too. Now, next huge thing that happened in my 30s was my husband joined the Air Force when I was 33. And I'm like, man, that was a long time ago. That was like 7 years ago. 7 years is like almost my whole 30s. And like, that was a big step for our family, and it has completely shaped the rest of the decade. So during all this time, during the autism diagnosis and the mental health breakdown and my husband joining the military, I stopped working. And that was a huge, tough decision, because I always wanted to be a working mom. I wanted to have no gaps in my resume, even if I would just like kept my pinky toe in the water of the working world. So when my kids were 8, I stopped working, and that was so hard. I really struggled with that for a long time. But I started a blog called The Mothering Beyond Expectations to kind of fill the void and give me some purposeful work to do. And that was a wonderful experience. It was a collective blog. I had it from 2016 to 2021. Published over 250 articles and had over 100,000 downloads on my blog. It's no longer available online. I wish it was. That's another story. So, that was a really special project. So eventually, with the Air Force, my husband, we had to move away. And that was a huge transition for me in my 30s. I moved away from the home of my entire adult life. So I moved to Lynchburg to go to college when I was 19, and we moved away when I was 34. So that was a long time. I had a very long time to build a life there. I had really solid community in several different avenues. That was a big transition. So solo parenting during that time, my husband wasn't training. I sold our house by myself. I moved with 4 kids from Virginia to Texas. I was driving them and pulling a trailer. I did have a helper. My friend Savannah came with me on that trip, but I was doing that without my husband, and that was like, put your big girl panties on and go, because that was hard. I think the next big event that happened in my 30s was moving overseas. We got an assignment to England, which was a dream come true, but also like, how do you move to another country when you have 4 kids and you uproot your entire life? I just remember thinking in that hotel room before we got on that plane to move to England, we have no return flight. We have suitcases. I have no house. I have no kitchen. The kitchen thing was always a big deal to me. Like, I guess it's like the ability to provide food for my family. It just was like, I am just stepping out into something completely brand new. And it was really scary and really exciting and completely life-changing that we lived overseas for 3 years. The next life-changing event was getting pregnant unexpectedly. Like, I found out I was pregnant less than a month after we moved to England, and that really changed my life in kind of a devastating way. I hate to say that because I love my daughter so much and I'm so glad I have her, but it was really devastating. The pregnancy just wrecked me physically and mentally. It completely rearranged everything that I thought my life was going to look like overseas, what I thought my motherhood was going to look like. Eli, who was born the year I was 30, he was going to be going to school. He was 4 years old. And I was like, okay, finally, I've kind of made it through like all of those early years, and now I'm going to get to focus on me. And then I was put back like at square one with having a newborn. And that was really hard. So if you've ever been in that situation, I'm just going to sympathize that that's really hard. I'm coming up right now. Like I said, I'm turning 40 and my daughter is about to go to kindergarten. So I am at that same like square on the board of my child's about to go to school, and I finally made it through, and I don't feel I'm kind of feeling scared, like what's going to happen, like when next shoe is going to drop. And I think that's only because I've gone through that hard time. And also that was like the last, like the vestiges of my career disappeared with that pregnancy too, because I had secured another job that was in education, that was going to be doing it online, like curriculum development. And I was so sick during that pregnancy that I could only work for like 30 minutes at a time before like throwing up or having to lay down. And so I told the people that I had gotten this job from, I'm like, I can't do it. And that disappeared. That was the last time I felt like I'm really going to push hard to have this like education career. I'm going to use my master's degree in English. And so I had to let that go. I also had to let go of the Mothering Beyond Expectations blog because I just couldn't keep up with it, with how sick I was during the pregnancy and how difficult it was to have a newborn and live overseas and have 5 kids. And that also was just broke my heart, was having to let go of that blog, because that was like my passion project after I stopped working. So I felt like I was losing a lot of pieces of myself that I had wanted to cling to. So yeah, just like thinking about that loss. I was 35 at this point, so that was really hard. Trying to find community again in a completely new culture was interesting and challenging. I had a solid idea of what community was because I had such good community in Lynchburg, Virginia. I had a church community, I had my motherhood friends, I had the Motherhood Collective who I worked for that was supportive. I had all of these different avenues of community, and trying to start over from scratch in a new country, in a new culture, not just British culture, but also military culture, because that was a mind-blowing experience. Like, that's been really challenging in my 30s. Okay, we cannot talk about life-changing events without talking about the pandemic, because, man, we all experienced that, and I think we all can say, I am not the same person I was before. And I know that I can say I'm not the same person I was before. Like, those 3.5 years just rocked us all. I think that had a huge blow also, just that time period on my faith journey, and just shifted a whole bunch of things for me. I'm not going to dive deep into that, but like, that was a really big shift in my 30s too. We also went through our first deployment. That was also really hard. That was during the pandemic, when all this stuff was happening. You can see why I'm calling my 30s like the hurricane decade, okay? So then we moved back to the States, so I have another international move, and then another culture shock because I haven't been back to the States for 3 years. We never went back to visit. So I have to reintegrate into American life. I'm like, okay, back in America, it's going to be easier. It has not been easier. I mean, some things have been more convenient. It's nice to be able to go to Walmart and Target and have wider roads to drive on and things like that. But I have tried to find community and find friendships in where we're living right now for the last 3 years. And it has been futile. I have gone to book clubs and Bible studies and classes and the library story time and preschool and all of the things to try to make friends. Oh, in the park, trying to pick up moms at the park. And I'm like, all of my tried and true tricks for finding friends and developing friendships have just failed or just crumbled. And I can get into a very, very long thing about why I think it's failed and why friendships have been so hard here. But that's probably another podcast for another time. Like, making friends in your 30s is just bizarre. But I haven't succeeded. So I feel like I have one woman where I'm like, I really like you and we really click and we can talk on a deep level. And every time I see you, I'm like, yeah, we had a good connection. But that only started like 3 months ago. And I'm like, we're moving again. We're literally moving in like 8 weeks from now. And I'm like, okay, awesome. The one person I've connected with for the last 3 years, like, now we're moving. So we also had another deployment last year, and mental and physical health challenges for myself and my kids. I think I've already mentioned that. And now we're about to move again to Colorado, and I gotta start over again, finding the schools and the community and the friends. So yeah, guys, 30s have been a wild ride for me. A lot of big stuff has happened with family, with the world, with my husband's career, with my career. So I don't know if everybody's 30s is like this, but mine have been really challenging and tough. And maybe I should just pat myself on the back for having survived all that, because I feel like sometimes I was just holding on for dear life, and other times I was just like being dragged on the back of the roller coaster because I wasn't even in the seat anymore. Nobody was driving. It was just driving itself, and I was just, getting dragged along for the ride. Something else that was good that I reflected on was that 10 years ago, I hadn't published anything beyond posts on my own blog, and they were like recipe posts and little crafts I like doing and like cute little updates from the kids, like first day of school. So like nothing really serious. And I'm like, wow, in the last 10 years, like I've really carved out a space for myself with my writing. And I'm super proud of that. Just diving into parenting extra needs kids, mental health, spiritual growth, military spouse life, and motherhood, just like the whole encompassing experience of motherhood. And also, I've had dozens and dozens of articles published in other places online too. I've published in Scary Mommy and The Mighty and Her View from Home, which huge life-changing experience getting published with Her View from Home. That changed my life in a huge way, because Her View from Home, which is an online publication, a website, but that connected me with a community of writers that just became my friends and like my professional mentors. And I've had so many opportunities since then. I've published more articles with Her View from Home, but even more so, like, I've connected professionally with other freelance writers, and it's given me like so many opportunities to get paid for my writing, to write for different spaces. I got published in Her View for Home's book that was called So God Made a Mother. And that was an amazing experience because I got to go to this book launch and we were all together, and like, I don't know, like that has given me life. So hey, shout out Her View from Home. Thanks for changing my life by accepting my article. And also the last thing is this group called the Spice Girls. That's just the name of like a book club / spiritual formation group that I'm a part of. We meet on Zoom every 2 weeks, and they're the writer friends that I met with through Her View from Home. And it's just been just a beautiful, life-giving, accepting, nurturing environment for spiritual growth. It is the safest space I've ever been in for my own personal spiritual growth. And I have been a part of church my entire life. And I've never felt safe and able to ask questions and explore faith issues ever in a space like this one. So that's been a life-changing thing for me. So anyway, thanks for listening to my long rambling about my 30s and helping me reflect on my next big decade. We're going to be moving, and I'm taking a break on the podcast for the summer, and so I can get my family moved and we can get settled into our new home and settled into the new schools. And my goal is to bring back the podcast in the fall, So look for it then. I don't know what life holds, so, hold that promise with an open hand because, you never know what life is going to bring you. My big goal is to publish 100 episodes before I quit podcasting because, it's still hard. It's still kind of isolating. The views have dropped off the edge of a cliff. I used to get 300 to 500 downloads per episode. And with the way podcasting is shifted, especially with Apple Podcasts, this last season, I was lucky to break 100 downloads on an episode. That was a good episode. So the stats have been discouraging, even though I've been delighted and so happy to put out even better content than I think I've ever put out. So if you have loved this podcast, if you are listening today, will you share it with a friend who is in the goop, a friend who is deep in the trenches of motherhood, who needs encouragement, who loves intelligent and engaging and encouraging conversations? That is how podcasts grow. Podcasting is slow media, and it grows not by going viral. It goes by people sharing it with their friends. So these are things I've learned about podcasting. It's hard not to get caught up in numbers, but stats are part of the equation. So please share it with your friends during this break. I hope maybe you can get caught up on the episodes that you've missed. There are, as of today, 84 episodes, so that's a lot to catch up on. Please share your thoughts on this last season in the comments on Facebook or leave a review on Apple Podcasts because that really helps boost the show and visibility. The more reviews it has on Apple Podcasts, the more people see it online. But yes, I'm going to sign off and say thank you so much for being a listener, and I appreciate your support of the Motherhood Metamorphosis podcast. Thanks for listening today. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Motherhood Metamorphosis. If you've enjoyed this episode, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe to this channel so you never miss an episode. Next, tell your friends. Podcasts are a slow growth type of social media, so promo works best when it's from person to person. If you know another mom who's in the goop right now, send her a text of encouragement and the link to the episode that is speaking to your heart right now. If you have a story about your own matrescence, the physical, emotional, hormonal, and social transition that occurs when someone becomes a mother, please leave a comment below. I want this channel to be a place where women can build community about the challenges and joys of their own motherhood metamorphosis. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope it encouraged you and gave you some good food for thought. If you ever have any questions, comments, or you'd like to reach out to me personally, you can email me at brittanyameng@gmail.com.